Thank you.
There you go.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. Particularly, thank you for the critics for being here. Always very generous. I send an email inviting, and within 12 hours, everybody responds, and we're thrilled. You are here at the tail end of an OLLI class that we've been given for years, which is Berkshire Previews. For the past 2 years, it's been very challenging. But I really want to congratulate the artistic directors who have been very creative and very courageous on how they put on plays. That's helpful to us, the audience, and also to the critics who are reliant in some degree on the artistic directors putting on plays. But our critics are also many other things. They're directors and actors and writers and novelists and playwrights. And I will sketchily give a bit of the background. A few years ago, we started the notion of asking the critics for a panel before the Berkshire Previews, where they could discuss the role of the critic in theater and also what they were looking forward to. And then after a couple of years, someone said, we really should be doing this at the end of the previews. And again, everyone agreed it was a good idea, and I sent out an invitation. And again, within 12 hours, everyone agreed. So we all got together in September, October, and this is what this is. This is a review of the season. In this particular time, we're going to look at the last 2 years of what has changed, and also I'd like to know what each of you have been doing over these challenging times of 2 years, and also speculate as to what we think is going to happen next. The challenges have included going to tents. A couple of the artistic directors put their shows on in tent. Chester set up at Hancock Village. Barrington Stage set up somewhere in Yenhamville in Pittsfield. They had a tent. Alan Burroughs of Shakespeare and Company went Greco-Roman and built a 550-seat amphitheater, which is gorgeous, which we could go to. Kate McGuire was setting up plays in her front lawn and her parking lot and all over. So we've had the opportunity, just as we did the first show that I went to this year from Barrington Stage, both the audience and the cast and everyone just cheered to be up and out and things. So in any case, right now we have on the screen 4 wonderful critics. Going alphabetically, Peter Bergman, who has a wonderful background as both a child model, a child actor, a child critic, and he's recently won awards for his novels. He's written plays, and he could comment more, and he has his own blog as well as appearing in the Berkshire Edge. And then Jeffrey Borak, who we've all known and loved for years, associated with the Berkshire Eagle in many different ways. And he's both applauded and jeered because he's very outspoken, and we adore that. And then we go down to Connecticut, and we have Dan Dwyer, who also is a Renaissance man. Not only does he have his theater blog, but he also reviews plays for a German publication. I always love that. And he also owns a antique bookstore. And then, of course, we have our dear friend Barbara Waldinger, who is a member of the Performing Arts Initiative, as well as a critic, as well as a theater professor. She's a professor, a director. What else, Barbara?
The chat. I wanted to say that there are things going on in the chat. People are asking questions. Maybe we should just look at that for a second before we begin. It seems that Alan wants to know, can we see the screen in gallery view? And people are responding to that. Ray, do you want to say something?
Well, I just typed in there, if you, at least on a PC, if you go to the upper right-hand corner to where it says view. So if you're not on a PC, if you're on a Mac or something, you can look and see where that might be. You can choose either speaker view or gallery view. So if you're on speaker, pick gallery. That's going to be more fun.
Actually, I think with many of the PCs in my laptop, you will get the pictures of the critics, but not, and me, but not the whole, that there was something about the difficulty of being able to set it up. I like it that way. I like to see the little heads, but apparently with BCC and the way it was done, it can't be done.
No, you should be able to see everybody. I mean, I can see all 6 of us right now here. So if you have gallery view,
I can only see the critics. I cannot see the audience, the little heads.
oh, okay.
Anyone see the little heads?
No.
All right.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, then I guess, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I guess it's in speaker view, which is unfortunate. I've got it in gallery as a host. So, wait. How's that?
Yeah, that's why I had not wanted in webinar, and I thought that, okay.
Is
All right.
that better? Can everybody see the gallery now?
No.
Hey, I just learned something new about Zoom.
Yes, everybody's happy. Looks good.
Okay, good. Me too. I have to learn
Thank
something new.
you.
There you go.
It's on gallery. It's on gallery.
Yeah, you should be able to see all the speakers now. We're not going to see the attendees. We're not going to see the participants, the audience, we're not going to see, just the people on the panel. So,
I know I had asked for to the audience, I'm really sorry. I wanted that way. There was some bit of a problem between Ollie and the BCC of what was technically possible. I wanted people to be able to ask questions themselves and not chat, but I was told that was technically not possible right now, or I thought it was being. That's what we had. They said no last time, but we got there. So we'll just have to be expressive in our writing. What I'd like to do now is just start with a question for all the 4 critics. What have you been doing over the last 2 years? What have been the just a few minutes of how you've coped with the challenges? Peter, could you start off? We'll do it alphabetically.
Sure. Last year in 2020, there was very little to see outside of a few plays presented by Barrington Stage Company and Berkshire Theatre Group. Everything else was kind of vague and next to impossible. A lot of theater companies around the region were doing other than theater programming, and a lot of which was available online. Some of it was very exciting. Some of it was a little too educational for me to have fun with it. But it was nice to have. Theaters basically stayed alive and tried to keep their audiences involved with them through those presentations. This year, it's been nonstop. I've seen as many as 6 plays a week during the summer. In fact, beginning of this month, that first week, I saw and reviewed 5 plays, which was really nice. It was like getting back to the old days and the reality of what it is I do.
Great. That's terrific. Jeff.
Again, not this past summer, the summer before this, there was obviously limited live presentation. There was some work that was being done on video, a lot of Zoom work, a lot of which I just didn't think worked. I just don't think Zoom is a friendly medium for theater. One of the more exciting programs, though, was TheaterWorks in Hartford, which actually did a full season, although all of it was streamed. Most of it was not available for review. They were all pretty much workshop presentations. They did one production of The Sound Inside, which many of us saw in its world premiere at Williamstown, as a production that was co-directed by Rob Ruggiero, the artistic director at TheaterWorks Hartford, and a Hartford filmmaker. And it was done on the stage at TheaterWorks Hartford without an audience present. And it was a really extraordinary experience. And it showed ways in which video could be used to make a play come alive in a way different than it is on a stage. I'm just an old dinosaur when it comes to this. For me, theater is a communal experience. And when it happens audibly or video, it becomes something totally different. And I think we have to look at it that way. But there was a lot of activity, and it was good to see that even on video, that theaters were trying to find innovative ways to keep alive, to remind audiences that they were there, and to look at these things in perhaps a somewhat different way, and not the least of which to provide work for actors.
That's great. You're advancing one of the questions that I hope to ask is what you thought would be for future for the theater. But before we let Barbara, I know you've been very busy this year.
Last year, of course, there wasn't much, but one of my favorite things was Audible. I've never listened to plays before on an Audible background, and it was exciting. I saw all the Williamstown Theater Festival pieces. I mean, I heard them, and I felt like because you have to use your imagination, they had sound effects, but because you could use your imagination, I think it was participatory, because they were speaking, you were hearing, and you were imagining. So that was one of my favorite things to do. And I do agree with Jeff that of the filmed and streamed and Zoomed things, the ones that worked best were the ones that were filmed live on a stage in an empty theater. That seemed to approximate real theater better than anything else. And as far as this season, yes, everything's opening up, but I thought it was interesting how it was bit by bit by bit. You know, we started out sort of tiptoeing into the first theater and wondering how it would be. And at Tanglewood wasn't going to sell very many tickets. And then everything sort of just ballooned. And that Tanglewood lawn looked like a James Taylor concert every time you went. So it grew and grew and grew this whole summer. And that was exciting to see. A little scary, but exciting.
And Dan, you cover a wider spot than most of us, right? Because you're in Connecticut and you hit New York, and I see your blog where you comment on theater all over that you've seen. What have you been up to these last 2 years, even though I've been following you?
Well, in the spring of 2020, as the theater was shut down everywhere, I did find a few things that were streamed that was streamed or were Zoom produced that I submitted to the Germans for review. And one of them that was one of the most satisfying was Take Me to the World, which was the 90th birthday celebration of Stephen Sondheim that featured, among other players, Christian Baranski and Meryl Streep, and that was hugely successful. There was also a college production that I reviewed for the German magazine from a Midwestern college, the name of which escapes me at the moment, of Spring Awakening, and it combined recorded live action stage material that was video, as well as location shots in and around the campus and the local town in which the campus was situated. And that was very effective. But otherwise, I agree with Jeff. Just planting yourself in front of a computer and then reenacting a play on Zoom is kind of unsatisfying. In terms of personal development, I took a playwriting course through the New Group in New York on Zoom, and that was interesting. I'm not sure I've got a play that needs to be written from within me, and I'm not sure I'll be a playwright, but it was an interesting exercise to get some perspective on what playwrights go through and how hard it is actually to put something on paper that is legitimately dramatic and can be dramatized. At the end of this course, everybody's 10-minute play was enacted by other members of the course, and there were only 12 of us, and there were some incredibly talented people. So I made a few new friends. And otherwise, running up through this season, which was pretty full, as has been observed, I pretty much used the occasion to rediscover Johnny Cake Books, which is my antiquarian book business. So the internet was more alive with everything, including the sale of used books. The book fair circuit, which was a diminishing phenomenon, was revived, oddly enough, on virtual platforms, and they turned out to be profitable for Johnny Cake Books. And then, as everyone's seen in the Hudson Valley and the Berkshires and Connecticut, there's a whole new crop of new people that have moved to the area. And a lot of that has raised a lot of retail and merchant boats, which include Johnny Cake Books. So it's been a good year, but I was glad to get out to the theater. Certainly not 5 or 6 times a week, but I think I made it out on the average twice a week for the last couple of months.
Dan, I would really love to respond to the fact that you took that playwriting class. I'm thinking about, I'm wondering if that would be a really good thing for us or for whoever's interested to present to Ali or to whatever audience wants to hear the idea that each aspect of the theater, playwriting, acting, directing, all designing, are so difficult, and the audience seeing plays has no idea of that. And wouldn't it be interesting to somehow get these people to talk to audience members and let them know what it is we do and how difficult it really is?
Yeah, and that's a good idea, because Zoom is compatible for doing a playwriting course, because it's essentially a series of writing exercises in which you recreate. Well, first recreate dialogue, then you take incredibly various elements that seem unrelated and try to construct a scene with them, and it builds up, and it's very difficult to take. Go through some of these exercises and render something that's cogent, both in terms of creating the mood, creating character, or creating a scene. It's a lot more difficult than you think.
Dan, do you think this is going to affect your life as a critic? Are you going to be kinder to playwrights now that you know how much is involved? And also for others, now that are you going to be kinder to artistic directors in order to keep them alive and well after their suffering of these past 2 years?
Well, I never thought of myself as an unkind reviewer, although I was accused of that for one of the things I wrote this season by someone who's very involved in one of the theater companies that produced something that I didn't quite like. I don't think it's a question of being kind to the playwright or being kind to the director as an individual. What I think a reviewer does is that you review, and I don't use the term critic, and we've had this discussion before. I don't consider myself a critic. I consider myself a reviewer. Having said that, I think a reviewer's job is to evaluate what is presented on the stage for the period of time from the curtain goes up and the curtain goes down, or whatever theatrical experience is combined with that. I don't think it's an occasion to assess by way of backstory what the playwright intended, nor do I think it's an occasion to indict the previous efforts of a playwright or a director. I think it's to review what is presented for the duration of that produced piece. And that's what I try to confine my observations to.
Does anyone have a different approach? How this past 2 years has affected your outlook as a critic or as a reviewer?
Naomi, I'd like to go back before I answer that. Go back just a little bit to the experience of the last 2 years. In October of last year, which is 13 months ago, in the height of the pandemic, Shakespeare and Company managed to reproduce a play they had done, I think 8 years earlier, called Martha Mitchell Calling, with the original star, Annette Miller,
Yeah.
in an interesting video production of the play on stage. Very little was added, some things were removed. The playwright and the director were able to excise certain things from the script, which made it a slightly different play. It was really interesting to see Annette Miller, 8 years after she first did the role, coming closer to the age of Martha Mitchell and presenting a slightly different woman than we saw in the original stage production. I think it was shown 2 or 3 times. I happened to catch the first one. It was fascinating to watch a play filmed on stage with none of the filmic aspects that are available really as part of it. I think there was a little editing, but not so much to make it into a movie or even a TV production. It still was the play. It was exciting. After a summer and fall of next to nothing, to have this particular play with this particular actress available. I was happy to see it, thrilled to review it, and having seen the earlier version, able to contrast the interpretation of Martha Mitchell by the same actress with the years between and whatever has transpired with her getting comments from her audiences. I'm grateful for that experience. I don't think I'd want to do many of those, but this was particularly enthralling. And I think Shakespeare and Company needs to be congratulated for making that attempt.
You know, that is great. There's something that the Irish rep out of New York did, which I found was fascinating. They put on Zoom, I guess, plays that they had put on in the past with the same actors and in different places. They were all separated out. And because they knew the play well, they had the same sets, so you had no idea they weren't on the same stage. There was only one thing that kind of gave it away, when one of the characters bent over to kiss the woman's head and he missed. And that showed you they weren't right next to each other. But it was one of these precious little things. But they did a very nice job of, which was another things of being in different places in front of the same set and giving you a satisfying experience.
Yes, I saw her in St. Louis. Hard to do a musical that way with the actors in 7 different states.
By the way, Peter, I just want to say that Alan Burrows just chatted in and said he thank you for recognizing Annette Miller in the play. So Annette Miller always puts on a wonderful theatrical evening. So, I know you talked about what you've been doing these past years, but what have been the highlights or the surprises of some of the plays that you were able to write about or review? Jeff, do you want to take that?
I'm sorry, just repeat the question for me. I was trying to read something there.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering, have you, of the past year or two, what have been the highlights? What are the surprises? Either things that you were really delighted that you weren't expecting, or
there were a couple of things. I think broadly, I would say, apart from some individual things that really caught me this summer, good, bad, or indifferent, what really impressed me was the enormous courage of the artistic directors working the theaters in our area. Their determination to create work for us against really incredible challenges. I have to say, one of the surprises for me, without going into a really, really long story about this, was my decision to kind of rediscover the Mac-Hayden Theater, a theater with which I had had a very long, tortured, and checkered relationship, and had not been to cover in a very, 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 very long time. And I made the decision this summer to give it a shot, partly because they were doing some stuff that I thought was unusual for them. And I was really very, very pleasantly surprised. In fact, I have a review coming out this weekend of a show that really knocked me off my socks. I think also what struck me this summer was women. Some very strong plays that featured strong female characters at the center and strong actresses giving performances that were worthy of those roles, even if on occasion, like Sister Sorry, for example, the play didn't measure up. But, between Harriet Harris as Eleanor Clotilde Horn, who is just brilliant in Hang, Katrina Ferguson in Shakespeare's Will at Oldcastle, Kathleen Carey, a just brilliant regional actress in Good People at the Theater Barn, Felicia Curry in Nina Simone, There's one other, but that also struck me as being really, really noticeable and front and center this summer.
That's great to hear. I can't help, I think the word is quelling to hear that women are being given front and center.
I'm sorry. One more, Grace McLaren in Row at Williamstown, which is a production we're asked not to review, and I think for valid reasons. But again, another sensational performance and a very, very strong, complex female character, as were all of these.
And also it was rather creative of Williamstown to be using the pool at the Clark for a play. I kind of missed that. I ended up in the hospital instead, but I've heard wonderful things about it.
For me, Row was a really interesting exercise because, like Barbara, I had heard Row in the Audible version, and of all of the Audible productions from Williamstown that I heard, this was the one that I felt most suited that format. My mind and imagination went all over the place with that in terms of where the creators of that show wanted us to go, and a very, very strong performance. And this show had originally been intended to be produced indoors on the main stage at Williamstown during the 2019 season. To have it done at the Reflecting Pool at the Clark, against the natural scenery of the hills behind it, on a starlit night, a low-flying helicopter notwithstanding, was just spectacular. And it called to our imagination also in bold, exciting theatrical ways. And so again, necessity being the mother of invention here. And my hat's off to Williamstown for coming up with that kind of imaginative, creative solution and having the talent to pull it off.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm sorry I had missed that, but we did see the sitting outside at Shakespeare, the new theater. It was kind of wonderful. I think the ones who really suffered, I don't know why the rain hit Jacob's Pillow all the time. They only had the outside, and they were calling off more performances. And what about you, Barbara? What?
I want to add one other thing to the production of Row. It's not only the hills and the reflecting pool, but I was sort of center looking at the pool. On my right is this granite wall, a long, low wall, and the lighting on that wall was worthy of a museum. I mean, you imagine that there were paintings going on all during the production. Gorgeous, the shadows, the colors. You didn't know where to look first. Amazing. But I am continually shocked and delighted, shock and awe, by the opera company, the Berkshire Opera Festival. I think Falstaff was brilliant. And I know that they had so much to worry about. They did do that outdoor Shakespeare songs, and then they didn't even do it outdoor. They had to bring it into the stables at the Mount because of rain. But they did that. I did not see Glory Denied. Sorry, I didn't. But I did see the production of Falstaff. The talent is unbelievable. The direction, the sets, this full orchestra at the Meharry. They took out several rows of seats to get a 32-piece orchestra there. It was amazing. And the audience, here we are in the Berkshires, we are not at the Met, and yet we have Met quality production right here. It is really astonishing that we were lucky enough to have this festival come to us. And the other thing that was so unusual, and I know that Williamstown did something like this with Alien Nation, but Ancram, the little opera house that could, Ancram Opera House, did this production called Plein Air, in which there were 3 different pieces. 2 of them were monologues, 1 of them was a short play, and you had to drive, and the whole town of Ancram was involved in this, because 2 of the 2 monologues, the play and the monologue, were at people's houses. So the whole town was involved. They were standing in the street with signs and arrows and dancing and pointing you up these narrow, winding roads to try to get to someone's house to see these three productions. First in a baseball field, second at someone's house with a big pond in the back. That was where the play was set. And the third one was this landscape artist. And you were going through all of her gorgeous gardens to see this monologue. So not only was the work interesting, but how they did it and the involvement of all the townspeople, because the pride that they took in having this happen in their town, it was wonderful. And then we were invited back to the Ancram Opera House just for a glass of wine and to say hello and to see their reconstruction, which was beautiful, the new theater. So I was really taken with that. In addition to seeing many other lovely things, but those are the two that stand out.
Thank you, Barbara. I think for many people, the problems and the challenges have made us all much more respectful and appreciating the historical role that theater plays in our lives, and the desperation that we also had in order to be with it again. The joy, I think there was joy when we were back in the scene. And we'll see, what do you think is going to happen? Does anyone else have a reflection that they would like to share with us as to what happened with them? Yes, Stan, please.
Yeah, among the highlights that have been mentioned by both Jeff and before, I mean, Falstaff was wonderful. I mean, we thought 2 years ago that Don Pasquale was a fabulous opera, but they really outdid themselves with Falstaff, the Berkshire Opera Festival. And it was, in my estimation, the highlight of any musical I saw this year. So that's one. In terms of specifics, the lighting and the sound design, let's not forget about the sound design for Row was extraordinary. The lighting design to use the forest edge and the trees in the distance to mimic the waves of an ocean is something extraordinary. And when you're thinking of sitting across a reflecting pool and have perfect sound clarity, there was a technical and engineering marvel. So that's, in terms of technical, Row was, among its other assets, a memorable highlight of the season. In terms of overall production design, in terms of creating a mise en scène, in terms of creating a world on stage that perfectly mimicked or perfectly encapsulated the theme of the play, I think what Beowulf Borak did for the set of Chester Bailey was just extraordinary, to suggest both this mental institution and a sort of almost a prison, but at the same time to evoke the language in the play that referred to walking into the great atrium, the great open space of Grand Central Station. That was an incredible production design. In terms of solo performances, Harriet Harris as Eleanor's a standout, and also for a male solo performance, I think what James Barry did with Title and Deed at Chester was particularly impressive, given how abstract the whole proposition of character and theme in that play was. And then finally, in terms of original theater, the biggest surprise was one of the plays at Ancram Opera House in Plein Air, and that was the third monologue by Celeste Lacine, who is a LGBTQ plus activist, and he plays a fairy. And the setting was under a huge 200-year-old oak tree in a wooded glen, and the audience is about 15 people on benches in front of this tree, and he sneaks into the scene through the wooded glen like a little fairy with the Tinkerbell and everything. And he engages remarkably on this monologue that gives the world history of fairies, as in the context of witches, but then it morphs into a contemplation of gay and individual rights, and it concludes as a homily to the future of the planet, given climate change, all of which transpires in about 20 minutes. And it was the purest theater I think I've seen in a long time, because it just transported me in ways that were totally unexpected. So that was one of the high points of the theater season for me.
Yes.
Thank you. You've made me sort of eager to have seen it in retrospect.
It really was remarkable. And the other highlight of the season in terms of direction, I've got to take my hat off to Joe Calarco. He wowed me 2 years ago or 3 years ago with his really, really electric and imaginative direction of Into the Woods at Barrington Stage. But what he did with Sister Sori was extraordinary, because that material really is very thin. It's a two-hander that posits two interesting people in basically a series of telephone messages that go back and forth, and how he created not only physical action, but emotional space on that stage, I thought was a directorial tour de force. So that's another specific that was a highlight.
Absolutely. I'd really have to agree with Dan so much on that, because this, for me, was a really problematic play. And what Joe did directorially was just absolutely astonishing. It's just a real he's always been one of my very, very favorite directors. He's really has such a theatrical sense, and a sense of how to tie all of that to the emotional lives and of the characters and the things that lie beneath the surface. And what he did here was just, I agree with you, Dan, absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
Just one thing, response to the chat, Ankrum is in New York. You can get to it via the Taconic, and it takes me from Canaan about an hour to get there.
Please spell it, because I believe on chat that she had the wrong spelling.
A-N-C-R-A-M.
Yeah.
And Peter had something to say.
Yeah, this was an exciting season for me, Naomi. In particular, there were more than 24 world premieres in the region. And that's more than usual. And I thought very exciting. Most of them were really fascinating pieces. I cover theater from central Vermont over to the Capital District and south, as well as down to East Haddam, Connecticut. So I get around and see a lot of things. It was someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Dan, but I could be wrong, of the character, the actress who played Nina Simone in Stockbridge for the Berkshire Theatre Group. Well, I thought she was quite wonderful. I saw a second Nina Simone musical down at the Goodspeed Musicals, or Goodspeed by the River. And the actress who played Nina Simone in that just blew me away. By the end of the show, I was exhausted and she did all the work. There were so many curious and interesting new things this year. There's a lot of gay subject matter, which is a bit unusual. Almost every theater had something that touched on it. Harriet Harris, who has been mentioned a number of times for her Eleanor Roosevelt, did that a week after she closed The Importance of Being Earnest for Berkshire Theatre Group, playing Lady Bracknell. And there are no two characters who could be more different than Bracknell and Eleanor Roosevelt. And I've always liked Harriet Harris. I appreciate the work that she does. In this instance, she was a spectacular regional theater actress, playing two so different parts, literally a week apart. And I think that needs to be heavily applauded.
That's amazing. 1 second, Ray, Macey's trying to get on. Macey is joining us. I'm not sure if he's still on it. Someone in the chat mentioned that I had admitted Chester and Daniel Kramer on, because he also had a tent. I was talking about, Shakespeare always had a tent, but early in the season, Chester announced that they were going to put their plays on in a tent at the Hancock Village. And I remember he was on the course and he mentioned that they would be on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but not Saturday night because there are weddings at Hancock Village on Saturday night. And he said he could not work a play into the wedding. But hello, Macey. Welcome to us. I think you have to unmute yourself or Ray has to unmute you, one way or the other.
While you're unmuting.
Okay, there I am. Okay.
Hi, Macy. There's a
Hi.
chat. There's a chat question I think you should pay attention to here, where somebody new to the area wants to know, how do you know what's going on in Berkshire area theaters? Where do you look?
Jeffrey's in the best position to announce that, right?
With all the changes going on at the Eagle these days, I'm not so sure, but certainly the Berkshire Eagle, and mostly now online, berkshireeagle.com through the web edition of the paper. And if you click on arts and culture, the Eagle's new features editor, Jennifer Huberdeau, has been doing a really spectacular job, both in print in the Sunday landscape section and then online, in keeping readers and potential museum goers and lifestyle. I mean, she's covering a really wide range of activity. So that's certainly one source.
And Macy and I write for Berkshire on Stage, and they have a whole lot of events that are going on, auditions, events, reviews, everything.
And Peter and Dan have their reviews in Berkshire Edge, which also has a calendar of events that are going on. I want
As does Berkshire Theatre
Welcome,
Critics
Macy.
Association.
Hmm?
The Berkshire Theatre Critics Association online has a list of reviews and what is being done.
I want to welcome Macey, who had an appointment that could not be broken and would agree to join us afterwards. He has a background as a reviewer, a producer, an actor, a writer, and we're very pleased to have you, and we hope you're fine. We were just discussing the highlights of our season. Is there something that you would like to point out that really thrilled you this year or last year?
Well, there's several things actually. Excuse me, going back to June, loved two of the three things at Chester. The third thing we did not see because of weather and other complications, but title and deed and the niceties were absolutely moving. The acting, the directing, we were very, very touched and enthralled by all that was happening. And the same thing goes for Barrington's Chester Bailey and Sister Sorry. Again, we were just caught, sat there with our jaws wide open at the quality of the acting and the directing and the writing. And then last Sunday, we went to Bridge Street Theater to see Miss Gulch Returns, which is a one-man play in which Steve Patterson, who's co-artistic director, whatever his position is, plays a bistro singer and Miss Gulch. And it's a musical. It's a one-man musical. He also is captivating. So those are the high points of what we saw. There were other things that we saw that we liked, but if you ask for those things that really stood out for us, by the way, when I say us, my wife Gloria is also a reviewer, but she did not review anything this year. And we have someone coming at 12 o'clock to appraise our house for a refinance, and she's cleaning up, so she's not available.
One more thing about Miss Gulch. Miss Gulch is the character in Wizard of Oz on the bicycle who takes away Toto to try to destroy him.
Yeah,
She's still on. I think her last performance is Sunday.
I think it is.
And she's worth seeing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you did you gave it a glowing review, Peter, I saw.
I did. First of all, Stephen Patterson, who plays both the club singer and Miss Gulch, was terrific. And secondly, the material is just silly enough to be almost outrageously funny.
Yeah. And there are lots of theater and social commentaries or comments in the dialogue and the songs. The songs are wonderful.
So now can you all pull out your crystal ball and say, what do you think is going to happen now for theater? How have we been affected by the paring down? And I think someone pointed out that there have been more plays, I think more issue plays, I think this past year. I think we're so grateful to have theater back on, and we don't want to miss opportunities. And the artistic directors have picked issues which are serious, except for, they also recognize we need comedy, music, and a little bit of change. But I think there's also mindful that we have to be more serious about covering the issues, because theater art has a whole responsibility in helping humankind get through some of the issues that we're facing. So what do you think we should be doing or will be doing for the next season? Anyone have any advice for the artistic directors or guidance for the audience?
Well, I like to go into a theater and simply be entertained, and I like to go into a theater and be challenged.
Mhm.
So I think we had a mixture of that this year with the Gershwin show at Barrington, and importance of being earnest, and Eleanor, and Boca, which I was not crazy about, but it had its moments, and the Miss Gauch. So I still think we can go to a theater and have both things happen to us.
I also think that, look what, not only did it spur performances that were highly unusual and creative this season, but if you think about Shakespeare and Company, for example, that theater is amazing that they built. And that's going to go on for years to come. That's not just a one season thing. And their use of the Roman garden, they've used their property really creatively, which I'm very pleased about. And I also think about all these tents that people have used, which can again be used in the future. It seems to me that a lot of the sort of germs that are beginning to sprout this season will continue to do it next season. I was delighted that Chester Theater came to us, to Hancock Shaker Village, because it's a very long trip to get there. And I thought, what a wonderful thing. And I'm hoping that Daniel will, of course, I know he's going back to Chester, but I hope that he will still maintain some contact with Hancock Shaker Village, because it was wonderful to have them in the neighborhood.
Theater's first purpose, Naomi, is really to entertain. And if you can entertain thoughtfully and provokingly, that's even better. This was a good season for that. There were so many interesting topic plays, off-the-wall topic plays. People have mentioned Sister Sorry. There's nothing quite like it, except perhaps in real life online, and much more entertaining than being online with an advisor yourself. That can be a little suspicious and dreary. Sister Sorry is a difficult play, and has been, Jeffrey mentioned it and Dan did as well, I think. But it was not just difficult. It was difficult in that it was so thought-provoking as to what people will do to acquire and reinforce a relationship that cannot be. I know that sounds peculiar, but that is sort of what that play does. Two people who have nothing to do with one another become so internally involved that it grabs you emotionally. It was a hard play, but it was certainly worth doing. I'd like to see more of that kind of thing. I would love it if the coming season brings us more and more new and original pieces that have not been seen here or anywhere else before. I had a little problem with one of them, a play called Boca that Barrington Stage produced by a local playwright, Jessica Provence. The play itself, I thought, was hilariously funny. I wrote a review which kind of promoted that concept. I have had so many emails and phone calls and personal confrontations with audience members who, having read my appraisal of it, went to see it and hated it. They hated it because they felt it was personally insulting. A lot of our snowbirds who live in Boca Raton in particular were highly insulted by the piece and furious with me for recommending it. that's kind of nice as a critic to hear from people, that there are differing opinions and differing reactions. And I encourage people to see everything. And I think they should make up their own minds as to what they liked, what they didn't like, and why. That play has reached a hideous extreme, as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing that is in Boca that a famous playwright like Neil Simon couldn't have written. And if Neil Simon had written it, it would have gotten a different reaction from the audience. But because it was a new playwright, a young playwright, it was considered by a lot of the people it focused on, in terms of characters, to be personally insulting. I find that very intriguing. And I hope that in the future, more entertaining material can provoke more people to react in different ways. That's what theater does when it does it best. You arrive at a theater with your own experience in your background, in your head, and you react to what you see and hear based on who you are and what you have lived through. And that's one of the things that Boca did. It provoked people. I personally was delighted with all of the negative comments I got.
That's the way you know you're being read. I mean, it's very.
In line with what Peter is saying, I think that as a critic, I can speak for myself. I began to question this season, what is a play? What is theater? And maybe it's time to revise our concepts of what theater and plays should be, and think, wow, theater could be everything. Wrestling is theater, circus is theater, everything is theater. And why should we be so narrow in the way we look at things? And I think this season has helped me certainly to think broader about what it is and what it might be.
Thank you. We just have a chat question on whether or not, or someone who came in late, whether anyone had anything to say about becoming Othello.
Yeah,
I can say something about that.
again too. Go ahead, Peter.
I thought the actress writer was quite exuberant and unusual and different. For me, it became a very personal experience because she went to Marymount Manhattan College and studied theater. And she studied with a woman who was one of my closest friends, who became a character in the play. And I thought the idea of the show was interesting. I thought the execution of it, once Liz Swain was brought into it, was overly fascinating for me. The effect that my friend Liz had on a young student actress, a Black woman who sought to be not just a female in the theater, but to encompass the world of acting. For a Black woman to play Othello was absolutely fascinating. I had seen her Othello in New York. I didn't know about her backstory and her history. It was exciting for me.
Yeah, I found the actress, again, very vibrant, very vital. I enjoyed watching her. I thought, however, it went on for too long a time. Actually, when I asked the house manager what the running time was, she said 90 minutes. It became 2 hours. The last the last 8 or 10 minutes was almost like a preaching sermon. On the other hand, to go into this woman's life, to see what she had to survive and how she did survive, and then create a life of great depth for herself, was very, very interesting and very moving. But that was weighed down by the last half hour.
Naomi, I think Dan had his hand up before.
Please, Dan.
Oh, we moved on to a different topic, but you asked me to, asked us rather to try to speculate about the challenges of future theater. And without getting into the weeds about Boca, I think at a much broader level, the real challenge to theater, specifically to playwrights, is writing comedy in these times, because there's not much that's really funny. about the world that we're living in, with you to contemplate domestic politics, the war on terror, the climate change, the politicization of, and the behavior of people in common social settings. We're living in a state of social anomaly. So, what's funny now? I mean, does farce work? Something like Importance of Being Earnest? I mean, is it relevant, or is it trite? Things that are Black comedy, are they too realistic? Is satire, are we beyond satire because we're living under satirical conditions? We're sort of in a WTF, world where nothing makes sense. So I think it's really challenging for new playwrights to write comedy, and to find where's the keyboard that makes sense? How do you strike legitimately funny chords that at the same time reveal the pathos underneath? I think that's a real challenge.
I think to find the funny chord is difficult, but also to find the drama. It's hard to compete with some of the drama that's facing us, and that, I don't know about the rest of you, we found ourselves watching more of news of things because that's so dramatic. It's hard to compare that to any soapbox or anything else. But anyone see anything funny?
Yeah.
I mean, that it was intended to be funny.
Yes,
Yes, but
definitely. I think Boca was a laugh riot,
Wow.
very well written and very funny. I saw a wonderful play up in Vermont called Queen of the Night, which dealt with the concept that you cannot be both Black and gay, which in itself is a funny concept. I've known a lot of gays who were Black, but this play was about the concept posed by an older generation of Blacks that you can be gay or you can be Black, but if you're Black, you cannot be gay. The play was wonderful, very thought-provoking, lots of interesting information and thought, but it was also humorous. It had a lot of fun to it.
well, that's intriguing. It sounds like an issue that's not worth of being debated, but I've been wrong before. But to carry that off in a play seems like a challenge, and I congratulate. And I just want to mention one thing about Peter. I always love reading Peter because he was so kind to everyone. I mean, he mentions everyone, including any with the maintenance people, the things of the lights, the music, there's the things, and everyone does that to some extent, but I know that is so kind of part of his religion. Jeffrey, you didn't zoom in on this.
I've been mulling a whole lot of things listening to this. I guess where I'm coming, I'm not going to get into the weeds about Boca also, except to say that if Neil Simon had written it, we would have had characters worth genuinely laughing with and caring about. And so I think, of course, the reaction would have been very, very different. My heart goes out to the artistic directors. I mean, we were talking earlier about the difficulty of writing plays, and I think also for actors and directors, the difficulty and challenges of doing this work. But I think what's impressed me the most in the centuries that I've been working here in the Berkshires, but I think never more so than now, is the thoughtfulness of the artistic directors who run our theater companies, most of them anyway, and how they navigate, especially in these times in which we're living, that line between, we go to theater, I think, for a whole number of reasons. One is to escape that crazy world that's out there, which is, for me, one of the reasons I just fell in love with The World Goes Round at the Mac Hayden Theater. It's just a wonderful review that just takes us away, but also doesn't separate us from the world. So part of the reason we go to theater, I think, is to escape. But theater is also designed to help us look at the world differently. It's about how we see things. And so how, as an artistic director, you navigate that narrow line between, on the one hand, talking about the issues that matter to us all, on the one hand, and on the other, and it's not necessarily binary, entertaining us. There are times when I'm looking at my schedule in a week and I'm looking at a particular play that's coming up and I'm breathing a sigh of relief and I'm saying, wow, this is one night I can go to the theater and I can, apart from whether the production winds up being good, but in terms of the material, I can just relax. I don't have to worry about having to write about profound issues that are in the play. But I think theaters have that that dual responsibility. And I think the artistic directors know that. And they don't want to isolate us from the world. We're not isolated from the world, even though very often it feels like we live in a bubble in the Berkshires. So I'm constantly impressed with that issue that I think the artistic directors face as they look ahead to the seasons that they're putting together. And now, in addition to all of that, the elephant in the room is COVID. How do you go ahead and look ahead to a season, the next summer season, or what to do in the winter, how we put that next season together with restrictions that may come down upon us that we don't know about yet. I mean, who would have thunk this? So that's where my thinking goes at this point.
Oh, no, thank you, because I remember with the last part, Kate McGuire from Berkshire Theatre Festival, they had an opening night last year, and the day before, the governor cut the number of people who could be in the theater from 100 to 50 or something like that. So I don't know how she solve that, but obviously she had to do it, and we will have these problems. Then the other thing too, between being entertained or also new work or the classics, or how do you get the audience? Because we've had, like Julie Boyd was talking about certain plays they put on because they know not necessarily that they're money makers, but that's very important in order to fund the theater. But I'm curious, Jeffrey, if you're going to see a classic like a Shakespeare, can you also relax and know, even though that there are issues, that it's an old friend, for example? Is there a...
Oh, sure. I welcome old friends, and I know it's common among my peers, and I used to hear this a lot with friends at the American Theatre Critics Association when we were at conventions, that everybody gets excited at hearing a new voice in theater, a new playwright, an exciting new talent. And that is fine. I welcome that. But very often, my greatest joys in the theater have been when a director and actors, everything comes together to look at a play that we think that we've known in a very, very different way. I think, to me, the most stunning example, certainly in pretty much all of my career, was a production of All My Sons that was done in the Williamstown Theatre Festival. It was Michael Ritchie's first or second season as the artistic director, and he did a production of All My Sons in the Nico stage. I love having to write about Arthur Miller, even though I don't care for all of his plays. All My Sons, in all honesty, has not been one of my favorite Miller plays. But this production, from the minute I walked into the theater and I saw the set concept, even before the lighting came up, this was a production that looked at All My Sons without changing the time period, without changing dialogue, without doing what some might consider stunt casting. It was Miller's play. But it was the right director with the right combination of actors, a production design that really told you what the inner life of this play was about. I I was left speechless at the end of that. And I remember coming home, and my wife of blessed memory looked at me as I came into the room and she said, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" And I looked at her and I said, "I have just had the most astonishing evening of theater in my life, and I'm going to have to write about this, and I don't know how to do that." I've seen that in countless Shakespeare productions that make you look at these plays that you think you know, that you've studied, that you've seen countless other productions of before, and there's something fresh and new about it, not necessarily because the directors changed the time period or done something of that sort. It's just that the text and the character relationships stand out in ways that you've just never seen before. So those things excite me. And I think there is a great value in doing classics as classics in the broadest sense of the word, as well as bringing new voices to us.
Yes, it's all very educational to see something that you knew one way, the other way. And for those of us who are not theater experts or things, it helps us to understand the difficulties and the layers. But one of my soapboxes is that if we do not have in regional theater the opportunity to put on new work, we will not be able to give playwrights a platform, because this is really where new work should be encouraged. And if it doesn't come from here, it certainly is much too expensive to try it out on Broadway these days. And Barbara, you had your hand up on
Yeah,
some.
a few things. I agree with Jeff about reimagining works we think we know. One of the great examples in theater history is Peter Brook's Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh yes, I saw it.
But
Years
here,
ago was that?
uh,
Was that 30 years?
I don't know how many years it was.
More.
Jesse thinks it's more. Anyway, I'm thinking about Art, which Shakespeare and Company did this summer. And that was a reimagining of a play that took place in Paris, right, in several different apartments. And there it was outside. And things had to be changed, and yet the essential parts of the play were not. The relationship between the characters were not. The humor was there. The fact that what can happen in a relationship, how it can fall apart, was there, and yet there it is outdoors with a whole new way of looking at it. And so I thought that Christopher Edwards and his cast did a very good job with that. Also, there was a new play that I thought was very, very exciting. Anne Underland wrote a play called Mr. Fullerton, which a lot of people criticized because it was about Edith Wharton's love affair, and it kind of demeaned her in some ways, made her seem very vulnerable in ways that maybe she was not. And I'm putting all that aside. I'm thinking of the direction of this play. Also, it came from Underland's script, which was Judy Braha directing. And this play was practically choreographed in its entirety. It was a very long, kind of like St. Anne's, where it was very long, narrow strip of stage with audiences on two sides. And the characters would sort of come, especially the maid, dancing in. And I loved that airy and light. It was like a sugar candy, and it was such fun to watch. So I think that first, we should not discount what a director can do with a play. And second, I'm going to put in a plug for staged readings. This is something I've done a lot of in my life. And this is a way for new playwrights to see their work on stage and to then see what has to be done to revise it, to get it ready for a production. And I am a big fan of staged readings. And
You have one coming up September 26th, right?
That's right, I do, at the Theater Barn on September 26th at 2:00. My theater company, HRC Showcase Theater, is finally starting up again. We do a national playwriting contest. We get hundreds of scripts, and we're doing one of them. And this play is called Lies, and it is about a woman radio broadcaster in World War II who works, she is American, but she's working for the Nazis. And she is talking to the Americans and saying things like, based on Axis Sally, you should quit. You're never going to win against the Germans. And then afterwards she goes to Berlin, is caught by the Americans, and is serving many years for treason in an American prison. She is assigned a young lawyer who doesn't know what he's doing. And because her parole hearing is coming up, he says, I'm going to get you off. And she says, no way am I leaving this jail. And that is the concept of this play. Very interesting. Sunday afternoon, September 26th, 2:00, a chance for a new playwright to be seen and heard.
Congratulations, that's very good. Barbara does a wonderful job. Everyone else has different hats. Is there anything they want to tell us about what is coming? I know that Peter's been awarded for, received awards for a novel that he wrote. I don't know everybody's current passion. If you want to sell anything or advertise or tell us what you're up to, we'll come and cheer you.
I have something for you, Naomi.
Oh, good.
The Berkshire Theatre Critics Association, after a year of not being able to do anything, on Monday evening, November 15th, at the Zion Lutheran Church, will present their 5th annual Berkshire Theatre Critics Awards. We're looking forward to it. There's enough that's been produced since October 1st of 2019, which we are including in our nominations and voting process. It should be a fascinating evening to see where the critics around the region have felt things have been outstanding. And it's open to the public. You have to make a reservation because we have limited seating, but the Zion Lutheran Church can seat a lot of people, as we did 2 years ago. We'll be doing less seating this year because of COVID restrictions, but we're back. Our awards will be handed out. Hopefully the recipients will be with us. And we're looking forward to a very exciting evening on Monday, November 15.
No, that's great. I know that I've organized another theater party for Ollie for a new production that Shakespeare Company is doing on the chairs, the UNESCO, and I think that's October 13th.
Yes, yes.
So for Ollie members who want to come, we have Arlie Breskin has a chat that she's organizing her. I think I need it back up on
the Barrington Stage Brunch and Theater, October 3rd. That would be a crossing, I believe, right? That's a crossing. And that's lunch and theater, October 3rd, run by Ollie. Yes, right, Ray?
You got it.
Okay.
And I think the Phyllis is talking, right? Is that as well? Okay, so now, Jeffrey, Dan, what do you have in the future that we should know about?
Nothing for me.
Nothing. I don't believe that for a moment, but we'll check it out. Dan has been.
I'm looking forward to the crossing because you don't get much flow. It's a folk Mexican dance and music. You don't see much of that in the Berkshires. That should be an interesting production. The other thing, I just want to correct myself when I was vamping about the challenges of running comedy in the future, and I was referring to how screwed up the world is. I used the term anomaly. I meant animate. It's a sociological term that means that it creates unusual behaviors in population. The term I used improperly before, but the right term is animate. Anyway.
Thank you. We have a critic criticizing himself. That's
a reviewer.
That's right.
Himself. Thank you.
Years ago, who started that? I'm not a critic. I'm a reviewer. Now suddenly everyone is. So you're saying that, Jeffrey? Are you happy with the term critic, or do you want? Or are you also joining the reviewer group?
On one hand, it doesn't make much of a difference to me. I've gotten into this discussion before, and it's a really interesting distinction. And I think where I've seen it come down is that a critic takes a much broader point of view in the writing. It sets the work that we're talking about against a much broader social landscape. I think given where where we are in terms of what's being asked of us. I would like to think that we offer more than just a shopper's guide to people. But I also think that maybe given what's happening with theater and what's happening in the world, I know Mandy Greenfield and I started to get into this conversation a little bit before the season began, and we never really pursued it. And that is whether we need to consider a new paradigm for reviewing or criticism, whichever way you want to put it. I think probably the shorthand for me would be that criticism would be the kind of broader think pieces that the New York Times used to run on Sundays from its theater critics. Often looking back at shows that they've seen that week or earlier, and talking about them against a much broader political, social landscape. I guess I'm a reviewer. It's never I've never really felt strongly one way or another. So whatever you want to call it is fine with me.
Yeah, the debate might be of great interest to reviewers and critics, less so to the audience, but as an audience member, I always find it quite helpful when the reviewer or critic puts things in context, and that we can learn more if there's a broader context, and if they bring out of their files some things that they could contrast to, that is kind of a richer experience. And Peter, what about you? Well, you have 3 hats, or at least. So are you both a reviewer and a critic?
I think I must be. One way or another, I think our responsibility as writers of material about other material that we have seen is to tell people what we saw, how it made us feel, and whether it was worth it.
All right, that's an interesting. And Barbara, who is both a director and a producer and a critic.
When I was teaching, one of the things that I did was take part in the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival organization. It's among all the colleges. And what I would do is I would see a production done by college students, and afterwards they called me a respondent, not a reviewer, not a critic, a respondent. And what I did was I similar to what Dan was saying, I responded to what I saw and try to involve all the students, try to ask many questions. What is it that you were trying to do? This is what I saw. And so I like the word respondent, I think.
Mm-hmm. And have all of you at some point also been an actor?
Yes.
Yes.
I've been an actor, a director, a producer, an artistic director, a lecturer, a workshop leader, a workshop participant, a prop master. Yeah, I've done a couple of things.
You just can't hold a job.
And I've acted and directed, and I've done stage managing.
But I like your role as teaching in Addis Ababa. You and 2 others are the only people I know in the Berkshires who have been to Addis Ababa, which was, I always like, I'd been there a couple of times. I always loved pronouncing it. The alliteration always got to me. But you taught there, right? Theater for a couple of years.
I was assistant director of the University of the Creative Arts Center at Haile Selassie University for 2 years. And then I decided to extend my contract for a 3rd year, and I went to a provincial capital where I taught English as a 2nd language.
I love the backgrounds of Peter's background, we know, but I also love that the first time I met Dan, I found out he was reviewing for a newspaper in Germany. And I thought that was an interesting reach. Did you want to comment on how you started that?
Yeah, a friend of mine was a producer largely of off-Broadway musicals, some Broadway musicals, and he was also writing for Blinkpunkt Musical, which is the German magazine, and for about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, and he tired of it. And he said he had read some of my material, and he said, I think you would be good doing this. So yeah, I write in English. I don't speak German. I don't read German. I don't write in German. I write in English, and they translate for me and run reviews. And I should add that the review I did on the Berkshire Theatre Group's Godspell last year was the cover story that they used in their magazine of last fall. So that was kind of gratifying.
Congratulations. That's right. We have another sort of, Macey and Barbara have a past liaison.
Yeah, we both lived on Long Island, and we were both involved in theater. Yeah.
I was the artistic director at Studio Theater in Lyndhurst, and Barbara directed for my theater.
So it was really nice to meet each other again up here.
Yeah, yeah. Nice to meet you any place, actually.
Exactly.
Have you seen anything of what's been announced for 2022?
Yes, the opera company is doing Don Giovanni, which they had to cancel because of COVID. So we are delighted. It's one of our favorite operas and so theatrical. So that is going to be interesting.
And the Met Operas, I just got that booklet. They're planning to do something this year.
And I think they're putting things online too.
Oh yeah, they've been having a team, but somehow I was watching it initially, but then the whole thing of squeezing the opera into my laptop got a little tiring. But any other theaters has Barrington Stage or Berkshire? I have not seen anything. Or Daniels probably. He was the first one this year to announce where he was going to produce, right?
I sure hope the National Theater will continue to put things online. That was wonderful.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. That was the thing of a new production, Streetcar Named Desire. To watch what they did with it was very creative and very new, fresh. But I don't know. What do we think?
None of the local companies have really gotten into what they're going to give us next year yet. It's a little early for most of them to make those decisions.
And they had quite a challenge to satisfy Actors Equity. I had set up a theater party for, what was it? What was the one we did this year? Anyway, we were going to have a Q&A after it for the
art. That was art.
Art, of course. And then they couldn't do it because somehow some of the rules that Actors Equity had made it difficult. The actors were not supposed to be there after the play and being involved with others. So it was kind of a last minute thing. I don't know what they're going to do, because both Julie and Kate, the Barrington Stage and Berkshire Theatre were working very hard. I thought that it was all national, that everyone was doing it, but those were the only two theaters in the country that were working with and worked out a deal initially with Actors Equity to put on theater last year. That was quite remarkable. So
the negotiation for that took a long time.
Oh yeah, I know. And they were doing it because, remember, Julie had pulled out every other row, and she got this special potion from South Korea to clean each seat and things. And we've been joined by Jesse. Jesse, do you have anything to?
Yeah, I had a couple of things. One is, I think that Daniel Kramer should be applauded for having put up netting around the theater, the tent, which he did in the middle of the season after having most of his audience in the early stage be eaten up by mosquitoes. And he also changed the whole staging for the second and third productions just based on what he observed for the first one. When you were talking about the adaptability of these artistic directors, this was really remarkable. Also, for those of us who saw Peter Brook's Midsummer Night's Dream, and would like to imagine that we are still young. I just checked, and that was 1970. That was 50 years ago. So
I admitted I saw it. Take it back. I take it back.
okay. So just those things I wanted to add. Thank you.
1950. It was, and it was in Brooklyn, right?
Well, of course, it started out at the Royal Shakespeare Company. It may have been in Stratford. When it came here, I believe you're right. We saw it, and I think we still have these orange or pink things where if you twirl them around, they make funny noises. And I think that's from that production.
I don't know if I may be thinking of a later, but I don't remember seeing it in 1950. I wasn't doing too much theater. Oh,
1970.
okay. 70, yeah, I was there. No hiding.
May I do a shout out?
Hmm?
May I do a shout out?
Yes, please.
Sharon Playhouse, which I realize is not very close for a lot of people, the northern part of the Berkshire County.
I'm sorry, could you talk a little louder and slower?
Sharon Playhouse, which is Northwest Connecticut. This year, they did not do any plays, but they had an outdoor theater, an outdoor patio. They did concerts and cabaret performances. And they entertained our community the entire summer. On October 2nd, they're doing a program to honor Jonathan Tunick. Jonathan Tunick, for those who may not know, is Stephen Sondheim's major orchestrator. He's an EGOT member, having gotten an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony, one of 16 people ever. It's going to be, again, October 2nd. There is food involved, a huge program from what I understand. It's like a 26-person orchestra and all kinds of entertainment, and then a reception afterwards. It's not regular ticket price, it is $125, but for what's going to be happening and to honor this man who is a major figure in our theater, it just may well be worth it for people to come down to us.
Thank you. It isn't that far away, is it? Well, only crossing the state line is always dangerous, isn't it? Jeffrey.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to something you were talking about, perhaps looking ahead. I'm really interested in seeing what kind of lessons the artistic directors learned from this summer in terms of what kinds of things might be carried forth, and not necessarily in terms of performance, although there were new innovations they had to use this year in the way they handled tickets, for instance. And because streaming came into the programming of so many of the theaters, for me, assuming everything goes back to a normal that we used to know and that theater can go back to being indoors again, just because it can, how much of it will? Will theaters still be, from time to time, be willing to deliberately schedule things for outdoors? Will things like contactless tickets, for instance, those sort of mechanisms, the use of video, the use of streaming, it'll be interesting for me to see how those things carry on.
You've been talking to some of the artistic directors. Is there something there that really caught your ear of what they were going to do? I mean, Ollie has been wrestling with this of what courses to do online versus virtual and or in person, and they've had hundreds of people from all around. Before, it was only those within the 50 miles, but now participants in California, Hawaii, because you could do it on Zoom. But there's certain things that you lose if you're not together in person, that contact, and also Steve, my husband, is doing a Euripides course beginning next week. And he wanted it in person. He wanted people to be able to read and interact. He didn't find teaching on Zoom that satisfying. But on the other of being able to have an audience, and you could be anywhere, and also you don't have to necessarily look your best. You wear a little top, and who knows what you're wearing below. So it gives you a certain freedom that, that you get.
I mean, for instance, Peter was mentioning earlier the Martha Mitchell presentation, which I also saw. And Shakespeare and Company also this year did a Zoom presentation of a David Hare play, Breath of Life, with Annette Miller and Tina Packer. Other theaters have been working with some video streaming. And for me, it'll be interesting to see if, well, let's use Shakespeare and Company as an example. If Shakespeare and Company were to do what we've come to accept as a regular season, live performances indoors and outdoors, whether projects like these other video streaming projects might continue still as ancillary programming for Shakespeare and Company, whether Audible Theater will continue for the Williamstown Theater Festival, whether Mandy is thinking of adding any productions that might be specially done for Audible, if that's something that could be arranged. Things like that. It'll be interesting for me to see how those things, if at all, become part of the general fabric of work that we see. Theater Works in Hartford, again, did some really extraordinary things streaming. So they are planning to go back to live performance this season, but will some of those streaming projects continue? So it'll be interesting, at least for me, to see how those things may work out in the scheme of things.
Right, and I mean, it's exciting to think that all could be done in some way. Technologically, there were certain things I wanted to do to have all of you together and have the audience zoom in, so that was that you could be sitting with each other. That was too technically challenging. But we all probably remember that Joe Papp did stuff at the Public Theater, inside the theater, and had 5 theaters, 4 theaters. They also did the park. And there was something exciting in the summer of looking up at the stars, and sometimes we even had a timely thunderstorm. But it's sort of exciting. I mean, I love that new theater in Shakespeare. It has certain, you could look at the stars and be outside, and that's kind of wonderful. Of course, it's different from being in the theater. Anyone else have any thoughts from the? Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I just wanted to add, because I was thinking again, for example, Berkshire Theatre Group has discovered a really lovely outdoor space in the courtyard around the Unicorn Theater. They've also been doing concerts of one kind or another, either on the lawn in front of the Unicorn, the tent at the Colonial. I find myself wondering if, even though they can go back to doing those concerts and programs indoors, whether there might still not be ways that those outdoor spaces might still be used.
Didn't wasn't the outside at Edith Wharton's at the Mount was used for years before this?
Yeah.
Not to the
I
same
remember at the Mount seeing a production, one of the last ones I think they did there, where there was a lunar eclipse in the middle of the production, and they made use of that. It was that was a thrill.
Organized, I'll tell you.
Well, one thing I'd like to see for the coming season, and I think it's vitally important, is printed programs yet again. Some theaters provided them, but some did not. In one instance in particular, up at Dorset Theater Festival at the Southern Vermont Arts Center, they, rather than have anything printed, they had complete programs available to be scanned off the corner of your seat arm. I did that, but unfortunately, my phone did not retain the program. It disappeared after about 20 minutes. Other theaters also asked you to scan a code to get your program, but then they told you to turn your phones off for the performance, so you couldn't refer to your program. It was gone. And I find that very awkward, especially in reviewing.
Mhm.
To not have the material available to work from, to not have people's names, the names of designers, to have bios that you might want to refer to for what actors have done in the past and how it relates to what they're doing in the present. The printed program, as old-fashioned as it is rather essential. Also, I noticed a lot of older people did not have phones with them, or if they did, they didn't have adequate phones to do a scan. And so the process of enjoying the theater and being able to talk about it becomes a lot less possible without a printed program. So
Yeah,
please,
so-
everybody, go back to printed programs.
Yeah, it was nice, so the morning after, to look at what you see. Macey,
I know I got here late, but I have to leave now because we have things happening at home.
Mhm.
So farewell, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Hope to see you soon. Bye.
thank
Bye,
you
Macey.
very much for joining us. My best to Gloria.
Okay, thank you.
We always miss her spirit. She's too shy, and yet she's really so entertaining that I was trying to get her to participate. I wanted Barbara to have support from the other part of the world. Well, I think, is there any final thing? We're just about running out of time. And I want to thank all of you really for your kindness. You're always so generous with your time. You always come to this. If anyone has any questions that we have not addressed, this is a very good time. And I only wish I could get your voice, but I'm afraid you'll have to chat if anything. There have been some technical problems. I guess someone wants to call about a Zoom issue. I don't know what it is, but if you could tell us, we would try to address it. Some had too much noise. It's not easy, right? Oh, here's
Barbara, what is the Theater Barn event on the 26th again? Okay, so this is a play.
Stage,
I don't even know that person. I didn't do it. So the play is called Lies, and it's written by a playwright named Jerry Slaff. And it's on September 26th, 2:00 at the Theater Barn. And it has to do with World War II radio propagandist who is now in jail for treason.
And the playwright will be there.
The playwright will be there. There will be a talk back afterwards, and with the playwright, actor, director, who is me.
and a celebration of my wedding anniversary, right?
Happy anniversary.
On the 26th. Very thoughtful of Barbara to send us. So we didn't know what we were going to do for our anniversary. Now we know.
And if anybody would like to make a reservation for the Theater Awards on November 15th, they
Yes.
can call 413-822-7384. Leave a message. We'll get back to you. The number again is 413-822-7384.
And are you going to be setting that up to be virus sensitive, or don't you know yet?
We're going to do the best we can to keep it virus sensitive and virus clean.
But it will be in person.
Yes, it'll be in person at the Zion Lutheran Church at 7 p.m. on Monday, November 15th.
Do you want to give the
At
address?
the Theater Barn, we are going to have, obviously, vaccination. You need proof of vaccination and masks. Hopefully, Peter, at the church, they'll do the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
You know, I think one of the things that we learned in these past 2 years, how vital theater is for our lives, and also how vital it is for Berkshire County, let us face that, and how creative people have been, artistic directors and all of you in bringing us together and in sharing your enthusiasm and reviews. So I'm delighted, and who knows what next season will bring.
Thank you, Naomi, for setting this up, and thank you, Ray, for making it happen.
Yes.
We lost a number of people at Ollie. I mean, Andy, who's always been so helpful, got sick, and Megan is out in California for a problem. And it is one of my joys of getting you guys together and hearing what you say. They're always fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Heidi, Thanks,
Hibernate
Naomi.
nicely this winter, and if you get work, let us know. Ray, you can shut us off in any way nicely. No,
Is
I
she
guess.
still there?
Anyone do an interesting break fast last night?
Not specifically, no.
I have to tell you, from New York, friends came from New York, and they went to Russ and Daughters, and they brought us an extraordinary collection of food for our break fast.
That's not.
It was everything from Gaspé lox and sturgeon and salmons and bagels, and it was lovely, just lovely.
You'll be breaking fast for days.
We'll be breaking fast. I mean, I didn't know that Russ and Daughters had special packets that they allowed to be exported to Massachusetts. It was really
Really?
exciting.
That's good to know.
All right, and bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
The Ollie Cup is in the mail.
Oh, great.